Rama is declaring his enlightenment. Ram said, that reality which is beginningless and endless, and which even the gods and the sages do not know, that reality alone shines. This reality is not the object of knowledge. It is the pure shining of awareness. What is world and what is object? We are no longer interested in notions of an external world. We're no longer getting sucked into questions about it, about how it arose. Enough of this confusing argumentation concerning unity and diversity. This is the question that Ram kept coming back to, what I called the Rama question. How does illusion arise? How does delusion arise? If consciousness is pure, if it's one, how come there's apparent diversity? This question has been asked again and again throughout the Yoga Vasishta, and we can now put it to rest. Because awareness is now aware of itself. It's established in itself. That which was in the beginning, that peace is unchanging. Just as there is space in space, there is this creation in Brahman, the infinite consciousness. So he is actually answering the question here. He's come back to the question again. How does all this arise from the Absolute without any intention on the part of the Absolute? Well, the translator has given us a little clue in parenthesis next to space. He's written distance. So just as there is distance in space, there is this creation in Brahman. Space is nothing. But when you start to measure it, and start creating notions about it, it becomes something. And this is what consciousness does in consciousness. Consciousness starts measuring what is within it. It measures it by discriminating parts of it, by comparing parts of it. And this is the basis of creation. And this is the basis of the belief in the reality of that creation. When I measure space, where's my ruler? I don't have my ruler at hand. But if I measure space, what am I measuring? If I say this is 1 foot of space, I'm not measuring anything. So we dispense with the measuring. We dispense with all the results of cognition and come back to that realization of Brahman. From an intellectual point of view, that might seem rather disappointing, like water falling through your fingers. But along with that realization is this sense, a sense of being. It isn't a giving in to nihilism, it's a giving in to reality. Reality in the most vibrant, presenceful self. If I can coin that term, presenceful, full of presence. When this realization arises in the jiva, this goblin known as samsara is set at rest, though it may still appear to be. And this is the point, it doesn't disappear, the world doesn't disappear, samsara doesn't disappear, but its dreamlike nature is realized, and we no longer get sucked into it. When the sun of ignorance sets, then the heat of sorrow ceases, and the daylight known as conviction in the reality of samsara comes to an end. Freed from ignorance, the knower of the truth engages himself in all kinds of activity as part of this pattern of birth, death and old age, etc., and continues to be, though in truth he is not. So the traditional understanding is, once you're enlightened, you sit there in joyful, indifferent bliss. But no, just as the Buddha, after his enlightenment, got up from the tree, got up from his seat underneath the tree, he worked tirelessly for the next almost 50 years in doing what he could to propagate his understanding. But if you're not a teacher, if that's not your responsibility, you just get on with whatever you've got to get on with, whether it's your job, whether it's your family, or whether it's doing very little. There is no ignorance here, no delusion, no sorrow nor pleasure, knowledge and ignorance, pleasure and pain are all Brahman alone. They're all the cognitive aspect of consciousness, but there's more to consciousness than the cognitive aspect. The cognitive aspect is a very small part of Brahman, and yet it's what we think in our ignorance is all there is. In the light of knowledge it is realized as Brahman. In the absence of knowledge there is nothing which can be designated as non-Brahman. Does that make sense? We've got a few negatives here. We've got 3 negatives. In the absence of knowledge, so when there's no understanding, there is nothing which can be designated as non-Brahman. There isn't anything that you can say, this is not consciousness. There's nothing external to consciousness. So, in the light of knowledge we realize this, but even when we're not in this light of knowledge, there isn't anything we can say is not Brahman, if we inquire into it. I am enlightened, and all my perverse thoughts have been set at rest. Perverse thoughts aren't a particular category of thoughts. All thoughts are perverse in the sense that they turn us from our essential awareness. Later on we have the analogy of the lamp. The lamp throws a light, but as soon as we put the light on, we forget about it and we get caught up in what the light is revealing. So this is how it is with our awareness. We forget it and we get caught up in what awareness reveals, or what it apparently reveals. And these are the perverse thoughts. I am at peace and equanimous, I am that, and I see this world as pure void. It's insubstantial, it's got no intrinsic reality, just like a dream. Prior to enlightenment, Brahman was but as self-ignorance. Now the same Brahman is as self-knowledge. As knowledge or as ignorance, as known or as unknown, Brahman alone is at all times. Just as the sky is one, though it is void, it is undivided, and it is blue. It's homogeneous. It's indivisible. This consciousness here is non-different from that consciousness there.